The Great Hall of the Galactic Coalition stretched far beyond what human eyes could see. Thousands of beings from 12 different star systems filled the massive space. Some flew, some crawled, some floated in special tanks filled with gas. The air hummed with translation devices, working to turn alien words into sounds that everyone could understand. Hyunwoo Kim sat in the small section marked for humans. Only 20 humans were allowed in the hall today. The rest of the coalition had much bigger sections. The Vaxari took up almost a quarter of the hall. Their blue skin glowed softly as they typed on floating screens with their 6 fingers. The Korthak filled another large area, their insect bodies clicking and buzzing as they talked to each other. The Nethans floated in their glass bubbles, their large eyes closed as they spoke with their minds. The ancient Elthani sat very still, their gray skin looking like old stone. Today was important. The coalition was deciding if humans deserved to stay as members. For 50 years, humans had been the newest species to join. For 50 years, they had been treated like children who needed to prove themselves. Hyunwoo looked at his notes. He had spent months preparing for this day. The papers showed everything humans had done for the coalition. They had fixed broken trade routes that saved millions of credits. They had stopped 3 wars before they started by talking to angry groups. They had found cures for diseases that killed people from different species. They had made space stations work better and use less power. But when Hyunwoo looked around the hall, he saw the same looks humans always got. The Vaxari thought humans were too simple. The Korthak thought humans were too slow. The Nethans thought humans were too loud and emotional. The Elthani thought humans were too young to understand anything important. So-Young Park sat next to Hyunwoo. She was the best human engineer in the coalition. Her hands were stained with oil from fixing machines that alien workers could not repair. Just last month, she had saved a Vaxari mining station from exploding. Before that, she had designed new air systems that worked for all species on mixed stations. But when Vaxari engineers talked about her work, they called it basics, maintenance. Taemin Lee sat on Hyunwoo's other side. He was a military man, but he had never fired a shot in anger. Instead, he spent his time talking to angry groups before they became violent. He had stopped the Korthak and Vaxari from fighting over mining, right 6 times. He had helped Nethan colonies deal with raiders without anyone dying. But when coalition generals talked about him, they said humans had no real military experience. Ji-Hai Choi was the 4th human in their small group. She studied alien cultures and helped different species understand each other. She had written the book that most species used to learn about their neighbors. She had created the first successful mixed species research teams. But other species said her work was interesting but not necessary. The coalition speaker called for order. The speaker was a Vaxari named Velthar. His blue skin was darker than most Vaxari, which meant he was very old and important. His 6 hands moved quickly as he brought up holographic displays showing human activities over the past 50 years. "We are here to evaluate the human contribution to our great coalition," Velthar said. His voice was translated into sounds that humans could understand, but it still sounded cold and mechanical. "After 50 years of observation, we must decide if humans deserve full membership or if their current status is sufficient." Hyunwoo stood up when his turn came to speak. The hall became quiet, but not in a respectful way. It was the quiet of people waiting for something boring to end. "Honored members of the coalition," Hyunwoo began. "Humans have worked hard to earn their place here. We have solved problems, prevented conflicts, and improved life for all species." He activated his own holographic display. Numbers and charts appeared in the air, showing everything humans had accomplished. In the past year alone, human engineers have improved station efficiency by 30%. Human doctors have reduced cross-species medical incidents by half. Human diplomats have prevented 14 potential conflicts from becoming violent. Human traders have created supply chains that serve species the coalition had ignored. A Korthak representative made a buzzing sound that meant disagreement. These humans speak of small improvements to systems that already worked. The hive mind calculates that their contributions are minimal. Efficiency gains of 30% are not significant when measured against total coalition output. A Nethan voice spoke directly into everyone's mind. It felt cold and distant. Humans create mental noise. Their emotions interfere with proper psychic communication. Their presence makes it harder for enlightened species to reach consensus through mind sharing. An Elthani elder spoke in a voice so deep it seemed to come from underground. Young species often believe their innovations are revolutionary. Time teaches wisdom. What humans call progress, older species recognize as repetition of ancient lessons. Velthar nodded at each comment. The mathematical analysis is clear, he said, bringing up new displays. Human technology remains primitive compared to Vaxari. Science. Human military strength is negligible compared to Korthak forces. Human psychic abilities are non-existent compared to Nethan gifts. Human wisdom is infantile compared to Elthani knowledge. So Young Park asked permission to speak. Honored speaker, may I address the technical claims? Velthar looked annoyed, but nodded. Vaxari technology is more advanced in raw power, So Young said, but it often breaks down when used with equipment from other species. Human engineers specialize in making different technologies work together. Last month, I prevented a station explosion that Vaxari computers could not predict. The failure came from interactions between Vaxari systems and Korthak modifications that created unexpected resonance patterns. Primitive pattern recognition, a Vaxari engineer called out. Not true understanding. Taemin Lee stood up next. Honored members, you say humans have no military strength. This is true. We cannot match Korthak numbers or Vaxari weapons, but we have prevented more conflicts through negotiation than all coalition forces have stopped through strength. Violence is expensive. Prevention is efficient. Cowardice disguised as wisdom, a Korthak general buzzed. Ji-Hai Choi was the last to speak. Respected beings, you say human culture is unnecessary, but mixed species research teams fail without cultural bridges. Trade negotiations break down without understanding. Even this meeting requires translation not just of words, but of concepts. Humans specialize in building bridges between different ways of thinking. Superficial social skills, the Nethan mind voice said. Not true understanding. When the humans finished speaking, Velthar called for the vote. The question was simple. Should humans receive full coalition membership with voting rights and equal representation? The vote was not close. 847 representatives voted no. Only the 20 human representatives voted yes. Even species that humans had helped directly voted against them. The decision is clear, Velthar announced. Humans will maintain their current status as probationary members. They may continue to perform maintenance duties, cultural entertainment, and basic services. They will not receive voting rights, equal representation, or classified access to coalition technology. The hall erupted in sounds of approval from most species. Buzzing mind whispers and deep Elthani rumbles filled the air. A few beings made sounds that might have been laughter. Hyunwoo stood up slowly. The hall became quiet again, waiting for the human tantrum they expected. Very well, Hyunwoo said in a calm voice. Humanity formally requests withdrawal from the coalition. We will be departing within 60 days. Now the laughter was loud and clear. Velthar's blue skin glowed brighter with amusement. Humans may leave whenever they choose. The coalition will function perfectly without their minimal contributions. Other voices joined in. Let them play in their corner of space. We barely noticed they were here. Perhaps they will mature and return in a few centuries, but a few beings in the hall did not laugh. A young Nethan named Scythia felt something wrong in the mental currents around the humans. Their minds were not angry or hurt. They were calm and determined. This scared her more than rage would have. An Elthani scholar named Morvain watched the humans gather their papers. They moved with the efficiency of people who had already planned for this moment. They were not surprised by the vote. They had expected it. This disturbed him. Korthak 7, one of the few individual thinkers in the hive mind, noticed how quickly the humans organized their departure. They had lists ready. They knew exactly what to do. This was not an emotional decision made in anger. This was a careful plan they had prepared in advance. But most of the coalition was too busy celebrating to notice these small signs. They had gotten rid of the annoying humans who always tried to fix things that were not broken. Now they could return to the proper order of galactic civilization. As the humans left the hall, Hyunwoo turned back one last time. "We thank the Coalition for the learning experience," he said. "We wish you well in your future endeavors." The words sounded polite, but something in his tone made Scythia shiver. It sounded like goodbye. Not the goodbye of someone planning to return, but the goodbye of someone closing a door forever. The first sign something was wrong came from Station Beta 7, a mining facility in Vaxari space. The environmental systems started making strange noises. The air recyclers worked, but not as well as before. The gravity generators fluctuated just enough to be annoying. The water purifiers processed more slowly. Chief Engineer Calthix checked the maintenance logs. According to the records, all systems were functioning within normal parameters. But normal parameters were different now. The systems worked exactly as they had been designed to work 50 years ago, before humans arrived. Calthix did not connect this to the human departure. Neither did anyone else. On Station Gamma 12, a trade hub near Korthak Space, the cargo management system began experiencing delays. Ships that used to dock and unload in 4 hours now took 6. The automated sorting systems worked correctly, but they sorted cargo the old way, not the improved way that had made everything faster. Station Manager Quex9 noticed the slowdown, but blamed it on a busy shipping season. The system was working. It was just not working as well as it had been working for the past decade. In the Nethan sectors, research stations found that their mixed species teams were having communication problems. Scientists who had worked together successfully for years suddenly could not agree on basic procedures. Nethan psychics found it harder to connect with non-psychic species. Experiments that required cooperation between different types of minds began failing. Dr. Mithen assumed this was a natural fluctuation in psychic harmony. These things happened sometimes. The teams would adapt. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic wings of Coalition headquarters, 3 separate conflicts that had been quiet for years began heating up again. The Vaxari-Korthak mining dispute flared back to life. 2 Nethan colonies started arguing over territorial boundaries. An Elthani trade guild accused a Vaxari corporation of cheating. Ambassador Keth thought it was just bad luck. Sometimes old problems came back. The Coalition had handled these issues before, but in the human sectors of every station, workers were packing. They moved with quiet efficiency, loading their belongings onto ships. They did not seem angry or upset. They worked like people following a well-planned schedule. So-Young Park supervised the technical evacuation. Her teams went through every system humans had worked on. They did not sabotage anything. They simply removed their improvements and modifications, returning everything to original specifications. "Why are we taking out the efficiency boosters?" asked Kaiho, a young human engineer. "Because they are human modifications to alien systems," So-Young explained. "We designed them, we built them, we maintained them. If we are leaving, we take our work with us. But the stations need these improvements." "The Coalition voted that human contributions were unnecessary," So-Young said calmly. "We are simply respecting their decision." The process was more complicated than it looked. Humans had not just bolted their technology onto existing systems. They had integrated their improvements into the basic operations of stations, ships, and facilities across Coalition space. Removing human modifications meant reverting to older, less efficient ways of doing things. On trade routes, human navigation improvements disappeared. Routes that had been optimized to save time and fuel went back to their original longer paths. Shipping times increased, fuel costs went up, but everything still worked. In medical facilities, human treatment protocols were archived. Doctors went back to treating each species separately instead of using the integrated approaches humans had developed. Cross-species medicine became much harder, but each species could still treat their own people. In diplomatic offices, human mediation techniques were forgotten. Negotiators went back to traditional methods of resolving disputes. Talks took longer and often failed completely, but each species could still represent their own interests. Taemin Lee handled the military withdrawal. Human military advisors had been stationed with Coalition forces throughout the galaxy. They had no weapons of their own, but they had served as communications specialists, tactical coordinators, and strategic planners. "Sir, The coalition forces are asking why we are removing the coordination protocols, reported Nari, a human communications officer. Tell them we are following standard departure procedures, Taemin replied. All human-developed systems are being returned to human control. But these protocols prevent friendly fire incidents between different species forces. Yes, they do. What will the coalition forces use instead? Whatever they used before we arrived. The withdrawal was not just about technology. Ji-hai Choi coordinated the cultural evacuation. Humans had become the social glue that held mixed-species communities together. They organized interspecies social events. They translated not just languages but cultural concepts. They helped different species understand each other's customs and values. When humans left, mixed-species communities began fragmenting. Not dramatically, but gradually. Vaxari stopped attending Korthak cultural events because no one explained why the events were important. Nethans withdrew from social gatherings because no one helped them understand non-psychic social cues. Elthani became more isolated because no one had the patience to wait for their slow, thoughtful responses. On research stations, mixed-species teams that had worked together for years began splitting apart. Without human cultural bridges, scientists from different species found it hard to collaborate. They could still work together on simple projects, but complex research requiring different types of thinking became much more difficult. The most visible change was in the service industries. Humans had filled many jobs that other species considered beneath them. They ran restaurants that served food to all species. They maintained equipment that required understanding of multiple technologies. They provided customer service that required patience with different communication styles. When humans left these jobs, they were not replaced. Vaxari did not want to serve food to Korthak. Korthak could not understand Nethan customer complaints. Nethans found physical labor disturbing. Elthani moved too slowly for most service work. 60 days after the vote, the last human ships left Coalition space. The departure was orderly and complete. Every human citizen, worker, student, and visitor was gone. They took their belongings, their technology, and their knowledge with them. The alien news networks barely covered the departure. Human minority population relocates to outer territories, read one Vaxari headline. Probationary species exercises relocation option, reported a Korthak information node. Most coalition citizens did not even notice humans were gone, but some people were starting to notice that things were not working as well as before. Station Beta 7 requested engineering support for their environmental systems. The reply came back that the systems were functioning normally. When Calthix insisted something was wrong, a Vaxari engineer arrived to inspect the equipment. Everything is operating within design parameters, the engineer reported. These systems are working exactly as they should. But they were working better before, Calthix protested. There is no record of any modifications to these systems, the engineer replied. They are functioning as designed. What the engineer did not say was that the design parameters were 50 years old. The improvements that had made the systems work better had been human modifications, integrated so smoothly that they seemed like part of the original design. When humans removed their work, the systems reverted to their original, less efficient state. On Station Gamma 12, Quex 9 filed a complaint about cargo delays. The response was that all automated systems were working correctly. When Quex 9 demanded an investigation, inspectors found that the cargo management system was operating exactly as specified in the original blueprints. But it used to be faster, Quex 9 insisted. There is no record of authorized modifications, the inspector replied. The system is performing as designed. The inspectors did not realize that the speed improvements had come from human logistics, specialists who had optimized the software, reorganized the storage areas, and trained the workers in more efficient procedures. When humans left, all of these improvements disappeared. In the diplomatic sector, Ambassador Keth faced his first major crisis since the human departure. The Vaxari-Korthak mining dispute had escalated beyond normal negotiations. Both sides were threatening military action. Keth tried to arrange mediation talks but ran into immediate problems. Vaxari negotiators wanted to resolve the issue through logical analysis and mathematical proof. Korthak representatives wanted to settle it through hive consensus and collective decision-making. Neither side could understand the other's approach. "Where are the human mediators?" asked a frustrated Vaxari negotiator. Humans are no longer available for coalition duties, Keth replied. But they understood both our methods and Korthak methods. You will have to find another solution. The problem was that no other solution existed. Humans had been the only species that could translate between radically different ways of thinking. Without them, species that thought in fundamentally different ways could not communicate effectively. 3 months after the departure, coalition efficiency had dropped by 15% across all sectors. Medical incidents involving multiple species had doubled. Trade delays were costing billions of credits. Diplomatic problems were multiplying. The plague started small, as most disasters do. A Vaxari trader on the outer rim felt sick after visiting a Korthak colony. He thought it was just stress from dealing with the insect people's strange customs. When he returned to Vaxari space, he went to a medical center for routine treatment. Dr. Vexhai ran the standard tests. The results were confusing. The trader's symptoms looked like Veltar syndrome, a common Vaxari illness, but the blood work showed patterns that did not match any known Vaxari disease. The treatment for Veltar syndrome made the trader worse instead of better. Run the tests again, Dr. Vexhai ordered. The equipment must be malfunctioning. The second test gave the same strange results. Dr. Vexhai tried a different approach. Maybe this was a new strain of an old disease. She prescribed broad-spectrum medicine that worked on most Vaxari illnesses. The trader got much worse. Within hours, he was fighting for his life. At the same time, on the Korthak colony the trader had visited, workers started getting sick. Their symptoms looked like hive rot, a disease that sometimes spread through Korthak communities. But hive rot responded well to standard treatments. This disease did not respond at all. Korthak medical drones tried everything in their databases. Nothing worked. The sick workers kept getting worse. On a Nethan meditation station, psychics started losing their mental abilities. It began slowly. Their telepathic range decreased. Their ability to share thoughts weakened. Nethan healers assumed it was stress from recent diplomatic problems. But when they tried to use psychic healing techniques, they found their powers were fading completely. In Elthani space, elders who had lived for thousands of years began developing memory problems. They forgot conversations from the day before. They could not remember the names of people they had known for centuries. Elthani. Doctors had never seen anything like it. Within 2 weeks, the same mysterious illness was spreading through all 4 major species. It affected each species differently, but it was clearly the same disease. Vaxari lost their ability to process logic. Korthak lost their connection to the hive mind. Nethans lost their psychic powers. Elthani lost their memories. For each species, the illness attacked what made them special. Emergency medical conferences were called on every major world. The best doctors from all species tried to work together to understand the plague. But they immediately ran into problems. Vaxari doctors were experts at Vaxari medicine. They understood Vaxari biology perfectly, but they knew almost nothing about how the disease might affect other species. Korthak medical drones had vast databases about insect biology, but their knowledge was collective and programmed. They could not adapt their treatments to work on individual patients from other species. Nethan. Healers relied on psychic healing techniques. They could sense illness in other Nethans through mental connection, but they could not connect psychically with non-psychic species. Elthani doctors had thousands of years of experience with traditional medicine, but their treatments worked slowly, over long periods of time. This plague killed quickly. "We need the interspecies medical protocols," Dr. Vexhai said during an emergency meeting. "What protocols?" asked a Korthak medical drone. "The ones that explain how to treat multiple species with the same medicine. The ones that show how diseases affect different biologies. No such protocols exist in Korthak databases." Dr. Mythan, the Nethan researcher, tried to access her memory of multi-species medical research. There were teams that worked on this. Mixed species medical research. They developed treatments that worked across species lines. "Who led these teams?" asked Elder Thyrain, speaking for the Elthani Medical Council. Dr. Mythan concentrated, trying to remember. There were coordinators, specialists who understood multiple biologies. They translated between different medical approaches. What species were these coordinators? The question hung in the air like poison gas. Slowly, reluctantly, the truth emerged. The interspecies medical protocols had been developed by human doctors. The mixed species research teams had been organized by human coordinators. The treatments that worked across species lines had been designed by human medical specialists. All of that knowledge had left with the humans. "Contact the human colonies," Dr. Vexhai said. "Request emergency medical assistance." "On whose authority?" asked the Korthak drone. "Medical Emergency Authority. Species survival takes priority over political decisions." But when they tried to contact human space, they discovered another problem. Human medical knowledge was not just about treatments and medicines. It was about communication, coordination, and understanding how different species thought about illness and healing. The message they sent to human colonies was translated by machines. But machines could not translate concepts, emotions, or the urgency of the situation. The human response was polite but distant. "We have received your medical inquiry. Our current medical facilities are focused on serving our colonial populations. We recommend consulting your existing medical resources." "They do not understand how serious this is," Dr. Mython said. "How can we make them understand?" asked Elder Therain. No one knew how to answer that question. For 50 years, humans had served as translators between species. They had understood not just languages, but ways of thinking. Now the coalition needed to communicate something complex and urgent to humans, and they had no way to do it effectively. Meanwhile, the plague continued spreading. It jumped between species through casual contact, but it affected each species in its own devastating way. Vaxari space stations began experiencing system failures as their logical thinking operators lost the ability to solve problems. Korthak colonies fell into chaos as workers lost their connection to the collective mind. Nethan communities fragmented as psychics lost their ability to maintain mental unity. Elthani societies ground to a halt as elders forgot the wisdom of millennia. The medical crisis was only the beginning. On Station Alpha 3, a major trading hub, the plague created a cascade of technical failures. The station was managed by a mixed team of Vaxari supervisors, Korthak workers, Nethan coordinators, and Elthani advisors. As each species lost their special abilities, the station's operations began breaking down. Vaxari supervisors could no longer solve complex logistics problems. Korthak workers lost the ability to coordinate large-scale operations. Nethan coordinators could not maintain telepathic communication networks. Elthani advisors forgot the procedures they had developed over centuries. Chief Engineer Calthix watched his station falling apart and realized something that chilled him to his circuits. The station had been running smoothly for years because someone had created systems that worked even when different species could not communicate perfectly. Someone had designed backup procedures for when normal coordination failed. Someone had built redundancy into operations so that no single species failure could bring everything down. Those systems were gone now. They had been removed 2 months ago, along with everything else the humans had built. "We need emergency engineering support," Calthix reported to Coalition Command. "All engineering teams are dealing with plague-related failures," came the reply. "You are on your own." Calthix had never been more frightened in his life. His station contained 50,000 beings from a dozen species. The life support systems were failing. The artificial gravity was fluctuating. The food distribution network was breaking down. And he had no idea how to fix any of it because all the cross-species engineering knowledge had walked out the door with the humans. Similar disasters were happening throughout Coalition space. Medical facilities could not treat multi-species. Populations, space stations could not maintain mixed crews. Trade networks could not coordinate between different species methods. Military forces could not work together effectively. On the diplomatic front, the situation was even worse. The 3 conflicts that had been simmering since human departure were now boiling over into violence. Without human mediators to translate between different negotiating styles, peaceful solutions seemed impossible. The Vaxari-Korthak mining dispute escalated when both sides sent military forces to secure contested asteroids. Vaxari ships used precision weapons and logical targeting. Korthak swarms used overwhelming numbers and instinctive tactics. Neither side could understand the other's strategy, which made the fighting more brutal and unpredictable. Ambassador. Keth tried to arrange peace talks, but the two sides could not even agree on how to negotiate. Vaxari wanted mathematical analysis of mining rights based on historical precedent. Korthak wanted collective consensus through hive mind discussion. There was no common ground. How did we resolve disputes like this before? Keth asked his staff. Human. Mediators translated between negotiation styles, his aide replied. What did they do that we cannot do? They understood both logical analysis and collective consensus. They could present Vaxari arguments in ways that made sense to the hive mind, and hive decisions in ways that seemed logical to Vaxari. Can we train someone to do that? It would take years, maybe decades. Keth realized that the Coalition was facing a crisis that could destroy galactic civilization. The plague was bad enough, but the complete breakdown of interspecies cooperation was worse. Even if they found a cure for the disease, they had lost the ability to work together on implementing it. 1 year after the humans left, Coalition space looked like a war zone. Not because of battles, though there were plenty of those, but because everything was breaking down at once. The plague had killed 12 million beings across all 4 major species. Medical facilities that had once treated anyone who needed help now only accepted patients of their own species. Vaxari doctors could not figure out how to treat sick Korthak. Nethan healers could not connect with non-psychic patients. Elthani medicine worked too slowly for emergency cases, but the disease was only part of the problem. Trade between species had almost stopped. Shipping routes that humans had optimized were now 40% less efficient. Cargo that used to move smoothly between different types of ships and stations now got stuck at every transfer point. Species that had traded successfully for decades could no longer coordinate their different systems and procedures. On Station Beta 7, Chief Engineer Calthix was fighting a losing battle against cascading system failures. The environmental controls worked, but barely. The artificial gravity fluctuated. The water recycling systems produced clean water, but not enough for the station's population. We need to reduce the population, Calthix reported to his supervisors. The life support systems cannot handle this many beings. The systems worked. Fine for years, came the reply. They should be able to handle the same load now. Something has changed. The systems are not performing as well as they used to. Run a full diagnostic. Find the problem and fix it. Calthix had run dozens of diagnostics. Every test showed that the systems were working exactly as designed. What the tests could not show was that the original designs had been quietly improved over the years by human engineers. When humans left, those improvements disappeared. The problem was not that the systems were broken. The problem was that they were working exactly as well as they had been designed to work 50 years ago, before humans made them better. Military problems were even worse. The Coalition had always relied on species working together during conflicts. Vaxari provided precise weapons and tactical analysis. Korthak provided overwhelming numbers and fearless soldiers. Nethans provided intelligence and communication. Elthani provided strategic wisdom and planning. But working together required coordination, and coordination had been a human specialty. The first test came when raiders attacked a Nethan mining colony. The colony called for help, and the Coalition responded with a mixed force of ships from all 4 species. The rescue mission was a disaster. Vaxari ships used long-range precision weapons. They wanted to stay far away and destroy the raiders systematically. Korthak swarms wanted to get close and overwhelm the enemy with numbers. Nethan ships relied on stealth and surprise attacks. Elthani vessels moved slowly but had powerful shields. Without human coordinators to organize the different tactics, the Coalition forces got in each other's way. Vaxari precision shots hit Korthak swarm ships by mistake. Korthak charges disrupted Nethan stealth operations. Elthani defensive positions blocked Vaxari firing solutions. The raiders, who should have been easily defeated, managed to escape with most of their stolen cargo. Worse, 3 Coalition ships were destroyed by friendly fire. How did this happen? Demanded General Kethvar, the Vaxari fleet commander. Korthak swarms did not follow logical attack patterns, replied Korthak Prime, speaking for the insect. Forces. Korthak forces disrupted psychic coordination, added Commander Lin, the Nethan fleet leader. All species acted without considering long-term consequences, said Elder Morvain, now serving as Elthani military advisor. Each species blamed the others for the failure. None of them remembered that mixed-species military operations had worked smoothly for decades before human departure. They had forgotten that human tactical coordinators had spent years developing procedures that allowed different military doctrines to work together instead of against each other. Economic collapse accelerated the crisis. Minor species that had traded with the coalition for generations began looking for alternatives. They could not get reliable service from coalition traders anymore. Shipping was unreliable, communication was poor, quality control had disappeared. Many minor species turned to human colonies for trade. Humans had maintained relationships with dozens of small civilizations that the coalition considered unimportant. Now those relationships were growing into formal trade agreements. The Zalani, a peaceful trading people, announced they were ending their coalition trade contracts. "We cannot get reliable service," their representative explained. "Human traders are more efficient and easier to work with." The Mocked, a species that specialized in rare minerals, signed an exclusive trade deal with human colonies. "Humans understand our needs better than coalition species," their ambassador said. One by one, minor species began leaving coalition trade networks and joining what humans called the Cooperative Federation. This new alliance was based on mutual benefit rather than hierarchy. All members had equal voices regardless of their military or economic power. Coalition leaders watched their sphere of influence shrink and finally understood how serious their situation had become. "We must take action," Velthar announced at an emergency council session. "The coalition is losing members, losing trade, losing influence. We cannot allow this decline to continue." "What action do you propose?" asked Korthak Prime. "We must reclaim our position as the dominant force in galactic civilization." "How?" "Our military cannot coordinate effectively. Our economy is failing. Our technology is stagnating." Velthar's skin glowed with anger and embarrassment. "We built this coalition before humans existed. We can restore it to greatness without them." But even as he spoke, Velthar knew his words were empty. The coalition was not just declining, it was collapsing. And everyone in the chamber knew why, even if they would not admit it out loud. Elder Therain spoke slowly, as Elthani always did. "Perhaps we should reconsider our relationship with humanity." The chamber erupted in angry buzzing, mental static, and glowing skin. The suggestion was almost heretical. "Humans abandoned us in our time of need," a Vaxari representative protested. "Why should we help them?" "We did not abandon them," Korthak Prime buzzed. "They chose to leave. They left because we told them their contributions were worthless," Scythia said quietly. The young Nethan had become one of the few voices of reason in coalition politics. "They offered to help with the current crisis, but we rejected their assistance." "We did not reject their assistance," Velthar said. "We simply did not formally request it. We sent a medical inquiry requesting help with the plague," Dr. Vexhai reported. "Their response was polite but clear. They said we should use our existing medical resources." "Why would they not help with a medical emergency?" asked a confused Korthak drone. "Because," Scythia said, reading the emotional undercurrents that others missed, "they do not believe we genuinely want their help. They think we are only contacting them because we are desperate." "We are desperate," Elder Thirain admitted. "Yes, but they do not want to be used. They want to be respected." The concept was difficult for most coalition species to understand. They were used to hierarchical relationships based on power and necessity. The idea that humans might want partnership rather than subordination was foreign to their thinking. As the debate continued, reports of new disasters kept arriving. A Vaxari research station had been destroyed when its experimental reactor exploded. The safety systems had failed because no one understood how to maintain the complex interaction between Vaxari technology and Korthak modifications that human engineers had somehow made work. A Nethan exploration fleet had been lost in an asteroid field. They had been using navigation protocols that depended on psychic coordination between different ship types. But some of the ships were crewed by non-psychic species, and without human translators to bridge the gap, the coordination had broken down. A Korthak agricultural world was facing famine. Their food distribution system had been designed for hive mind, coordination, but it had been modified over the years to work with individual thinking supervisors from other species. When humans left, the modifications disappeared, and the system could no longer handle the complex logistics of feeding billions of beings. The situation is getting worse, not better, Korthak 7 reported. His analysis was grimmer than ever. Coalition infrastructure is failing at an accelerating rate. If current trends continue, we will face complete civilizational collapse within 6 months. What do you recommend? Velthar asked. Immediate reconciliation with humanity. Full admission of error. Genuine request for assistance based on equal partnership rather than subordination. The suggestion was met with horrified silence. Admitting error to a species they had dismissed as inferior, asking for help from beings they had treated as servants, offering equal partnership to people they had considered barely worthy of coalition membership? Unacceptable, Velthar declared. The coalition does not beg for assistance from departed members. Then the coalition will cease to exist, Korthak 7 replied simply. The debate raged for hours. Pride warred with pragmatism. Arrogance fought against survival instinct. Some representatives argued for military action against human colonies, forcing them to provide assistance. Others suggested economic pressure or diplomatic threats. 18 months after humanity's departure, the coalition delegation arrived at Haven Station, the capital of the Human Cooperative Federation. The 4 representatives had been chosen carefully, young enough to not carry the prejudices of their elders, experienced enough to understand the magnitude of their mission. Zeph was the new Vaxari representative, a logistics specialist who had spent years studying the trade route failures that followed human departure. His blue skin was pale with stress, and his 6 hands trembled slightly as he reviewed his notes for the 100th time. Lith floated in her environmental bubble, the Nethan empath who had been one of the few to sense the wrongness in humanity's quiet departure. Her large eyes were dim with exhaustion from maintaining psychic contact with her dying homeworld. Korthak 7 moved with the precise efficiency of his species, but there was something different about him, an individual consciousness that had emerged from analyzing the coalition's failures. He was no longer just another drone in the hive mind. Morvain walked with the slow dignity of his ancient people, but his gray skin showed stress cracks that came from watching millennia of Elthani wisdom prove inadequate to the current crisis. They had expected to arrive at a small human outpost, perhaps a few converted cargo ships and makeshift stations. What they found instead shocked them into silence. Haven Station was enormous, larger than any coalition facility. But more importantly, it was alive with activity from dozens of species. Not just humans, but Zalani traders, mocked miners, Threks, explorers, and many others that the coalition had dismissed as minor civilizations. The station hummed with efficient activity. Ships of wildly different designs docked and departed smoothly. Beings who looked nothing like each other worked, side by side. Translation systems handled hundreds of languages and communication methods. Everything flowed together like a perfectly orchestrated symphony. How many species are represented here? Zeph asked their human guide, a young woman named Yujin. 47 at last count, Yujin replied cheerfully. We get new members, joining the Federation almost every month. Everyone brings something valuable to contribute. The delegation exchanged glances. The coalition had 12 member species and treated most of them as junior partners. The Human Federation had 47 species and seemed to treat them all as equals. Their first meeting was with the Federation Council, a rotating body where every member species had equal representation, regardless of size or power. The current council president was a Threx named Clix, whose people the coalition had barely acknowledged as sentient. Welcome to Haven Station, Clix said in perfect coalition standard. We are honored by your visit. How can the Federation assist our coalition neighbors? The formal politeness was worse than hostility would have been. There was no anger, no desire for revenge, no gloating over coalition failures. Just calm professionalism that made it clear how far the coalition had fallen. Zeph activated his holographic display, showing maps of failing trade routes, reports of system breakdowns, and casualty figures from the ongoing crisis. The coalition faces unprecedented challenges, he began. We believe that cooperation between our civilizations could benefit both sides. What kind of cooperation do you have in mind? Asked a familiar voice. Hyunwoo Kim entered the chamber, and the coalition. Delegates fell silent. He looked older than they remembered, but also stronger. There was a calm confidence about him that came from building something successful rather than managing something that was falling apart. President Kim, Morvain said slowly, we meet again under different circumstances. Indeed, Hyun-woo replied, taking his seat at the Federation Council table. When we last spoke, you informed us that human contributions to galactic civilization were minimal and unnecessary. Has something changed? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Each delegate felt the weight of their species' arrogance, pressing down on them. Lith spoke first, her mental voice carrying genuine emotion. We were wrong. All of us were wrong. We did not understand what you were actually doing. What were we doing? Hyun-woo asked quietly. You were holding everything. Together, Korthak 7 answered. You were the connections between systems that could not connect themselves. You were the translators between minds that thought in completely different ways. You were the bridge between species that could never understand each other directly. So young. Park entered the chamber, now wearing the uniform of Federation Technology Director. She had been monitoring the Coalition's technical problems through long-range sensors. Your infrastructure is failing because you removed the integration protocols, she said matter-of-factly. Your systems work exactly as they were originally, designed to work. The improvements we made over 50 years have been lost. Can those improvements be restored? Zeph asked desperately. By us? Yes. By you? No. So Young's answer was blunt but not cruel. The improvements were not just technology, they were understanding. We knew how to make Vaxari logic work with Korthak instinct. We knew how to bridge Nethan psychic communication with Elthani philosophical discussion. We spent decades learning how different minds worked so we could help them work together. Tae Min. Lee joined the meeting, now serving as Federation Defense Coordinator. Your military coordination problems are the same issue, he reported. Each species has excellent tactical abilities, but tactics are not strategy. Strategy requires understanding how different approaches can complement each other instead of interfering with each other. You have seen our intelligence reports? Morvain asked, surprised. We monitor Coalition space for humanitarian reasons, Tae Min replied. We want to know when civilian populations need assistance. The Coalition delegates realized that humans had not been cut off from information about Coalition space. They had been choosing not to intervene. Ji Hye Choi entered, last, now serving as Federation Cultural Integration Minister. The chamber fell completely silent as she took her seat. Everyone remembered her work in creating the first successful mixed-species research teams. You want to know why we have 47 member species? Ji Hye said without preamble. It is because we listen to them. All of them. We do not rank species by military power or technological advancement. We ask what each species does well, and we find ways for those abilities to benefit everyone. She activated her own display, showing Federation production statistics, research breakthroughs, and cultural achievements. The numbers were staggering. In 18 months, the Human Federation had achieved technological advances that had taken the Coalition decades. Their economic growth was exponential. Their military, while smaller than Coalition forces, was far more effective because it integrated the unique abilities of all member species. How? Zeph whispered. By treating everyone as valuable, Ji Hye replied simply. The Zalani are excellent traders, so we put them in charge of commercial relations. The Mocked understand mining better than anyone, so they lead our resource extraction. Programs. The Threks are natural explorers, so they chart new territories. Humans are good at coordination and integration, so we help everyone work together. And what do humans get in return? Lith asked. Partnership, Hyun-woo answered. Friendship, the satisfaction of building something that makes life better for everyone involved. The Coalition delegates sat in stunned silence. They had spent centuries building a hierarchy based on power and dominance. Humans had spent 18 months building a partnership based on cooperation and mutual respect. The results spoke for themselves. We need your help, Morvain finally admitted. Our people are dying. Our civilization is collapsing. We were wrong to dismiss you, wrong to treat you as inferior, wrong to ignore your contributions. We know, Hyun-woo said gently. The question is, what do you want from us? Everything, Korthak 7 answered honestly. Medical assistance for the plague, technical support for failing infrastructure, diplomatic mediation for conflicts we cannot resolve. Military coordination against external threats. We need everything we lost when you left. And in return? The delegates looked at each other uncertainly. They had been authorized to offer trade agreements, technology exchanges, and formal recognition of human achievements. But they sensed that none of these things would be enough. "What do you want?" Zeph asked. "Nothing from the Coalition," Hyun-woo replied. "We have moved beyond our old relationship. We are not interested in returning to Coalition space or rejoining Coalition structures." The words hit like physical blows. The delegates had feared this response but hoped it would not come. "However," Hyun-woo continued, "we are willing to provide humanitarian assistance to civilian populations in Coalition space. We will offer medical aid for plague victims. We will provide technical support for failing life support systems. We will coordinate refugee assistance for displaced populations. And the political crisis, the military threats, the economic collapse, those are Coalition problems to solve. We will help people who are suffering, but we will not prop up political systems that created the suffering in the first place. The Coalition government will not survive without more comprehensive assistance," Lith said desperately. "That may be true," Hyun-woo acknowledged, "but preserving the Coalition government is not our responsibility.